Welcome back to Hall of Fame College Football's Sooner Magic podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. And if you love college football, particularly Oklahoma football, you're definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss one moment of Hall of Fame college football. Folks, we have another awesome guest on tonight's show, a guy most of our podcast audiences probably knows well as one half of one of the most popular shows on OU football out there on the web. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to shout out our partners at Hall of Fame College Football, Mint Mobile, where you can score the best deal in wireless, bar none, with no salesperson required, while not sacrificing service, speed, or anything you're used to with your big wireless carrier, except for the feeling of being financially violated each month when it comes time to pay the bill. You heard me correctly. By logging on to our partner website, trymintmobile.com/HOF, you can ride the wave of the largest 5G network in the country, get unlimited talk, text, and data for your first 3 months of service, and pay just $45. $15 a month, folks. And if you're skeptical, do what I did and add a Mint Mobile line to your current phone with Mint's digital eSIM card, which is activated online and works autonomously from your phone. For y'all that don't know what autonomously means, it means on the same phone you have, in addition to the service you already have on it. That way, you can compare Mint to your current wireless carrier for 3 months before making the switch long-term and allow them to prove to you just how easy it is to save big money on your wireless service without sacrificing the comfort Big Wireless has brainwashed us all into believing we need. $45 is about 1/3 of what I was paying with Verizon for 3 months. It only took me about a month to realize I needed to go ahead and cancel my Verizon service. $15 a month. After that third month, it goes to $30, but that's still quite a bit less than what you pay with Big Wireless. Go check it out. Thank me later. All right. Let's get into this. We're going to talk a little bit about spring football. We're going to talk a little bit about some of this recruiting stuff we're hearing, whether it be through the portal and stuff like that. But right now, let me go ahead and bring in our guest, man. He is one half of the Barry and Mack show, one of the most popular Oklahoma football shows on the internet. Love to have him on here. Good to have him here with us today. Barry Wise. Oops, I think I got it. Now there he is. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Doing good, man. How about yourself? It's good to be on here.
Good, man. Just all kinds of stuff going on in Soonerland. I've been getting beat to death all week and over my gigantic take. So we can talk about that a little bit later on. But wanted to jump in here and kind of talk to you about what you've been seeing within the program, what you guys got going on the Barry and Mack show, and just glad to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. If you guys don't know who I am Barry of the Barry and Mack show. The other half of that is former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champion, Mr. Damian Mackey. Everybody knows the intro. And we're recording very, very soon. We got some stuff coming up that we've been working on quietly and slowly. Got some changes on the horizon, but we are on YouTube. Go to the Barry and Mack show. We're everywhere you can listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. I'm over there on Twitter. We have the Barry and Mack show official Twitter. But if you want the cut-ups, you want the college football talk, you want to see the intricacies of performance, how those things relate to the game and what guys are doing on the field, follow me at letter B, WISE Fitness. Right there. I figured it out because it's not mirrored. Right there. Letter B, WISE Fitness on X. Very easy to find. So go over there and check it out. But excited to be on here, Jason, and talk a little spring ball, man.
Hey, man, I'm glad to have you too. And hey, make sure you guys get over there and check that out. I actually started listening to you guys before I ever saw you on YouTube and stuff. I know that's more the newer side. You guys did more just an audio podcast at first, but you guys have been one of my first listens for a long time. Enjoy the show a lot. We'll have to get old D-Mac on here too before too long, man. I enjoy watching his takes, but I got to tell you, you guys got me in trouble whenever I started echoing all that stuff with Jaron Canick whenever we were on K Chris's show that time. So,
Yep.
watch it now. Oh, fun stuff, man. But hey, let's talk a little bit about what you saw in the spring game. I mean, we saw some good things. I think we saw a couple of things that maybe weren't as bad as we were hearing coming out of the reports out of Sooner practice about the offensive line. We saw some good, saw some bad. But what was your overall take out of there and what you saw?
I said this on another show. I said if there ever was a spring game, and I don't mean to put the crimson colored glasses on and be all sunshine pumping here, but if there ever was a game where you would come out of it saying, man, the offense played pretty well, but also the defense played pretty well.
Yeah.
It felt like it was that type of game, right? They both kind of just traded shots. There was a stretch where the offense dominated. You got to see the ones out there. Jackson sling the rock, looking good. You see that OU has a big-time target, a big-time receiver in Deion Burks, just a massive pickup. I argue more impactful than had they gotten Trey Harris in the previous season. I think Burks is a better overall player than Harris, who ends up at Ole Miss. So OU has some big-time things going on offense. The offensive line, as you said, I'm sure we'll dive into the nuts and bolts of that, look pretty good. I've been critical of Beatonbow, but man, he just got another first rounder in the NFL draft, and recruiting at a much higher clip. On the defensive side, to me, the transfer portal kind of tells the story, and I know we'll dive into that as we go, but man, there's depth everywhere. It's the first time where you watch them come out for warmups, and I wasn't there live, man, but I got enough shots and I saw enough people talking. It's the first time in probably a decade, I would say maybe since 2013, that OU rolled out multiple NFL bodies across the line of scrimmage. And I would argue even more impressive, NFL bodies in the secondary, and maybe even more importantly, NFL bodies at linebacker, man, a position that was starving for depth when Venables took over.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where a lot of that conversation was headed this whole past, couple of weeks when we're talking about linebackers, is that, you probably had a little room to not be doing great when it first started, when he first got here, because it was just, the cupboard was bare. I mean, look, they weren't playing great defense before Lincoln left. And the guys that were decent on that defense, his last defense there, were leaving. They were going to the draft, or they were transferring out. You're talking about 45% of a roster turnover right away. By the second year, you had turned over basically all of it, aside from, the few guys that you still have left, in your Woody Williams and obviously, you got Woody, Danny, and again, it was like four of them, Ethan Downs, and then Billy Bowman, right?
Yeah, Downs on defense. Yeah. And just a handful of guys on offense. You've turned over the whole thing.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, you start looking at it, and it's where you may have had room before. Now they've recruited, Samuel Omosigo, top 100, Lewis Carter, top 100. These guys that are just unbelievably good. That Phil Picciotti, that's we hadn't seen a ton of him yet because he's been coming off an injury, but another IMG guy that you're like, whoa, this guy's going to be really good. Kobe McKenzie's been doing his thing. I was really impressed with the way that it seemed like he played. That was kind of Seawalt. Welcome to the show, Seawalt, man. Glad to see you, brother. Real quick, I just saw this, what Jimmy had said. Let's pray for the people affected by tornadoes today. It looks like Omaha got hit hard. Definitely prayers going out to everybody who's been affected by that. Man, the weather in this part of the country is wild, man. So anybody who's been affected by that. But listen, I just think that I was really impressed with Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, but more than that, I also think that this secondary, from top to bottom, we didn't see Billy Bowman, but you didn't probably need to. You wanted to see these freshmen, and they look different. These are different guys than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, man. I highlighted it on another show. First, I want to talk about McKenzie. McKenzie, I thought, was probably one of the best backers in the game. I mean, he got the show started running laterally. I believe it was a hit on If it wasn't Hicks, it might have been Sawchuk. I can't
Yeah,
remember exactly what it was there. Just running, getting out ahead of the guard, reading guard, getting out of his stance. And this is stuff that we haven't seen. One of the things me and DMAC have talked about with Venables and how Venables recruits is he's looking for the measurables. He's looking for guys. We can dive into maybe some of the stuff that Schmitty is looking for too when it comes to position by position. We've gone deep into this. But guys got to be able to move, but they also got to be football players. They have to have the IQ. They have to have the ability to react. That's why you go get a kid, D2, who just looks like he can play the position, fill a depth need. But McKenzie, man, reading the guard, having the quickness now after a couple years of seasoning, getting out of his stance and making the hit. As it goes to the secondary, saw a commenter, Mike Boganowski, looking really good. I was incredibly high on him as a recruit.
absolutely.
Thought that he moved faster than maybe some people thought, but he was always going to be a hitter. He's a guy who, in a spring game, when Josh Bates is having to tell you to chill out, then you're probably doing some good stuff. But a guy who I didn't see enough about, and that's because he wasn't picked on. He had J.J. Hester most of the game, was Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy played extremely well. He has good feet, very physical at the line of scrimmage. He's a guy who gets in and out of his hips extremely well. Loved everything I saw from him. And Reggie Powers, another Reggie in the secondary. And there was one play that he had where I knew he had some good get up to him, right? He's a good jumper at 2 feet. He's not necessarily the long speed guy, but man, is he explosive. He covers that inside the hashes, hash to hash. He covers ground like nobody else. And man, he had that play where he's diving for that pick. Sooner fans, go back and watch that and see how quickly he stabs that right foot in the ground and gets gone out of that stance. It was so explosive. So yeah, man, OU's good to go, along with the experience that you talked about that we didn't see.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you didn't, whenever K. Chris was on, we did a quick post game right afterwards, and he was talking about, man, you didn't need to see Danny. You didn't need to see Billy. You didn't really need to see those guys that have already, what you get with those guys. I was also really impressed by Makari Vickers. Really looked good at the corner position. That's something that you wanted to see. Because without Gentry Williams, during the springtime, you're hoping somebody else kind of steps up into that role, and that Woody Washington can go kind of move over and play that nickel role. It feels like you're going to be able to have that. Saw something out of Jacoby Johnson too. I like that. Man, I love that kid. We talk about a stud athlete. Both of them, Makari and Jacoby, they're just unbelievably athletic. So it was good to see some of that out of those guys. And then, of course, you can't not talk about the defensive line too, but tell me what was, I don't know, I guess you were talking about linebackers being most impressive. What did you see out of that D line that you liked, and anything else?
Yeah, man. So I'll do what I liked, and I'll also do a little bit of what, I won't say what I didn't like, because it's a spring game. It's tough to gauge some things. And this is just a little inside.
A lot of vanilla and stuff like that too.
Yeah, it's very vanilla. But one of the things you can watch is the one-on-ones. The one-on-ones don't change, right? Especially on the line of scrimmage. It's the same in a game as it is in the spring game, right? Maybe guys taper it down a hair. Maybe if you're a stud vet, you might dial it back, but you're not dialing it back in the first half. You're trying to save your position, right? Especially with this competitive, as Venables does things, it's going to show up on film if you're loafing. So what I liked, Jaden Jackson is the real deal. There's a clip posted over there on X where he absolutely blows up the center. Can't remember who it is, who it was who was at the position at the time, but they're trying to do a little pin and pull, and Jackson just blows up the play from the jump, right? And it's just that physicality. The most impressive piece was that he kept his feet. But man, him being over 300 pounds, Stone now being over 300 pounds, as Venables has confirmed, that's big deal stuff. And what that tells me is those guys are very likely going to be rotational pieces, because I think they would have slow played some of that weight if they could. if they thought maybe they weren't going to be factors. But I don't think there's a way you keep Jackson off the field. He's going to be one of your 3 best guys, playing guard to guard that they're going to have on that team, especially going into the SEC. I mean, he's more than just a spark plug, Ashton Sanders type guy. He's a guy who can give you just explosive reps, but a guy who I was really impressed with and I wouldn't say he was unsung in the offseason, but what was Caden Woolard, right? I have multiple clips. When I went back and watched, I would argue, outside of Ethan Downs, who had a few very explosive big plays, I wouldn't say a single player disrupted the pocket more than Caden Woolard. His length is impressive. You can see him when he's warming up. He's one of the longer players out there, man. 90 kind of fits him well, too. It's a good number for him. But, man, there are some technical things, and I know he comes from a family of football players, which is a lot of times a good having that DNA in your history is very, very good for guys. It really bodes well for being a possible NFL guy. It just the numbers are the numbers, probabilities are probabilities. But, man, the way he bends, the way he uses his hands, and what he can get to in his bag, how he explodes out of his stance, incredibly impressive. Caden Woolard, man, also played well against the run, right? Kept his feet, slid down the line of scrimmage on a few plays, made the tackle at the line of scrimmage. Very, very strong guy. In terms of what I maybe was not a fan of, man, anytime you see a tight end who's brand new to the program handling arguably your most athletic defensive end out on the edge, and I'm talking about Bauer Sharp against PJ, that's a little bothersome to me. That's a mismatch all day long. And a guy like PJ, who's now deep into the program, right? He's not a new guy. He's not green. That should be a battle he wins most of the time. RMT looked a lot better.
He kind of had a mixed deal out of PJ, right? It was kind of a mixed bag. He played really good at times. I think that he's still maybe a little more technical than he needs to be at sometimes. You know how when you're trying to learn so much, and I know that everybody's kind of I know with him, he's really trying to learn from Coach Chavis and stuff like that. And so he's been real technical, and they've wanted him to get very good with that. Mm-hmm. I think at some point he just needs to go be an athlete, because you're talking about Bauer Sharp on the other side. Whenever he went up against Ethan Downs, that was a mismatch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I came away from it thinking, I don't think Bauer's a blocker. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's kind of, let him go catch footballs. I don't know that he's going to be a blocker yet, but
not a guy like Downs.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of, but again, it's spring and stuff. Like real quick, I want to get to this super chat. Good evening, Mr. Jason, and welcome, Barry. Just subscribe to your channel too. Here's to a great show. Praying for those who are affected today from those storms too. Thank you, Neilio, our boy from KC Mo. He's a K-State guy, but he is one of our favorite Hall of Fame Mafia members. We appreciate that, and happy birthday to Bishop Frank, one of our boys in the Hall of Fame Mafia as well. Hey guys, welcome into the show, everybody. Hank, Kim Hurst, Jimmy Satterfield, Timothy Green. Hey, horns down always, Timothy. Always. Who else we got in here? Of course, Sooner Legend, Robbie Martin, Dalpo. Let's see, I don't want to miss anybody. Seawalt, thanks for coming in, guys. We appreciate everybody showing up. Make sure that you hit that like button, and if you are not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button as well. Get over to the Barry and Mack show as Neil did, and make sure you subscribe there too. They've got some new stuff coming out you're going to want to definitely see. Again, one of my favorite shows out there. So, yeah, awesome stuff. Sharpshooters in here as well. I just saw that. It's a good deal. Good deal. All right. Yeah, man, I think there was some stuff that I think, what you said to start with, where you saw some really good out of the offense. You saw some really good out of the defense. You saw some breakdowns. I think that when you've got as many young guys that are starting to get a little more look, you're probably going to get a little bit of that uneven play a little bit, right? Yeah. But I feel like you're starting to see, to me, in the recruiting, especially on this defensive side of the ball, today you're hearing that they're getting a crystal ball in there for Dang it, what's his name? The kid out of Houston, Spring, Texas. Oh, good grief! I don't know why I just forgot his name.
I will tell you.
Yeah, it's I just had it. Just had it here. Anyway, you know, you start looking at some of these guys that they're bringing in, and with these freshmen, you know, we had Mike Boganowski Sr. on here yesterday on the show, and then he was on Sooner Legends earlier in the week too, and you know, blowing up Bauer Sharp on that play, you know, that was, I mean, hitting. You talked about Reggie Powers, you know, these guys, Guillory. They just look different. Guillory, yeah, Cortland Guillory, high 4-star guy, cornerback, tall, speedy, physical. These are the kind of guys that, you know, listen, I was a fan of Josiah Wagner. I understand why, you know, with that injury, he starts falling down that depth chart. He probably felt like he needed to get out of here. But this is kind of what you're running into when you start recruiting on the level that we've never seen particularly out of Lincoln Riley. But really, you hadn't seen this much focus on the defensive side of the ball in a long time, man.
No, you haven't.
Go ahead.
And I would argue, I mean, if you look at a program like Alabama and Clemson, they had 5-stars sitting the bench all the time. Yeah, right. That is just the nature of the beast. You know, ideally, you have a program where, and Venables in about his 3rd year, and now we're in year 3, right? Going in with Venables going into the SEC. It was about year 3 with Clemson that he was able to hit his stride, and I cannot say it enough, and it's shown up on the defensive side of the ball in how good of an evaluator that Venables is. Not only is he good with just the recruiting side of getting your big name sort of quote unquote can't miss fellas, your David Stones, your Jacksons, right? Your Makari Vickers, your Jackson Arnolds, these guys that are big time dudes, but he is such a great evaluator when it comes to guys who are going to be impact guys. I mean, he batted 2 for 2 on the defensive line with Ford and Bothroyd. I mean, they were exactly what they needed to fill that gap. He knew exactly what was necessary and said, he's a fit. And then you've got a strength coach in there who knows where to get these guys to perform at the level that Venables wants them to perform at. But man, when you see the recruiting spike, as you've seen it, you're going to have a player like Josiah Wagner, who had a fantastic offseason, by the way, last year. He was talked about quite a bit.
They were calling him Bulldog. He had a nickname. It was Bulldog, you know, and so he was hardcore. I like the kid. I was thinking whenever I was like, man, that's a depth piece for sure.
Yeah,
but I can understand why he's doing it. I mean, you know, he's going to be sought after. And from what it looked like on Trap House Boomin's show, his dad was talking in the comment section, and he was saying that he's got offers. So there's opportunities there, I think, for him. And you know, it's a shame for Oklahoma, but this is what you're going to see sometimes is some of these guys, if they, same thing that happened with Justin Harrington. He was great all first half of last season, gets hurt. These guys start catching up. You know, these guys start catching up, and that's just kind of where we were. You know, unfortunately, this is what is going on with Jaron Kanak too, because of the fact that you've got guys that are showing up and getting recruited that are on another level than. That's why his mishaps are amplified, you know, so much. And not to mention, you know, Dusty Dvorak, you know, having the hot mic issue there, but. It just goes to show you that these things, that's why these things get amplified. And you know, of course, we're going to talk about it on here because it's one of those things that buddy playing that position, the middle linebacker position, Mike linebacker, he runs your defense. That's his job. So for you to be in the wrong spot, you would want to make sure that, you know, you got to make sure you got the right guys in there. Going into the SEC, you've got the second toughest schedule in the country. You can't afford to not play the best guy, right?
You can't. And when you have a player like McKenzie, who people would say, well, he's going to struggle in pass defense, right? Stutzman struggled in pass defense early on in his career,
Right.
He made some major changes this past season where he started getting more physical. When you go watch the film, he's doing more veteran moves. He might, grab a guy who's running a dig
Yeah.
and might give him a little bump. This is small.
Get him off his route just a little bit, something.
Exactly. And that's stuff that wins you games. Those are the details of the position that are coached on a consistent basis. But if you're a guy like Kanik, where the game is happening so fast around you because you're just not experienced playing the position. And here's what I would say to the fans who maybe are very pro Kanik. And it's not that I'm anti Kanik. I'm just want to say the truth, right? And the truth is, when he got to Oklahoma, he was the most athletic linebacker in the room when he arrived. And I don't think anybody would argue that point. He was, especially straight line speed, getting downhill. It's why he's still great at making plays on the backside. He just doesn't get out ahead of stuff because the processing speed just isn't where it needs to be. And he's lucky he is such a great athlete. He can make up some ground. But now I would argue Lewis Carter, in some respects, is a great athlete compared to Kanik. He is a better athlete. He's faster out of his stance. He's going to be better in pass coverage. He flips his hips better. He runs laterally better. He's stronger. He's the strongest backer in the room, pound for pound. So then you have a guy like Omasigo, who is way more of a cheetah. I know people have talked about Kanik at that position. He doesn't move his hips well enough. He doesn't get in and out, especially with as deep as they'll have that cheetah position playing. I remember Venable's first year, Deshaun White looked like he was playing free safety sometimes. It's just a funky position, and they want a lot out of those guys. So in the beginning, he was playing because he was a great athlete. No, you needed it. By the time teams caught up with, hey, we can pick on that area of the field late in that Venable's first year, he had a hard time seeing the field. And this past year showed us, man, Kip Lewis played better. Kobe McKenzie down the stretch played better. And in the spring game, they also still played better.
They've overtaken him. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you've seen him being overtaken completely now. They're not going to continue to and I think at some point you fall out of favor with the coaches when you're just not getting it right. And I think that's what, I don't know that what Dusty was saying was so much just viewing it by that single play. I mean, to me, it's one of the things that got me in trouble is I like that. To me, sounded like that's coming out of the Switzer Center from the guys that Dusty talks to in the Switzer Center or around the Switzer Center, right? So it's clear that, and I think that, look, first off, you're not running with Deion Burks. Any linebacker's not going to run with Deion Burks. But it's like what you talked about. You've got to do something to get him off that route. You've got to make sure that you're in the right place so that he doesn't just blow by there. You got to slow him down a little bit to allow that, the safety to get over the top there, or, to try to do that. And look, again, it could be futile to do any of that stuff with a guy like Burks. He's that explosive. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to him. And we'll talk a lot about that here in just a minute. But to me, when it's getting as loud as it's getting around there, I mean, I don't know that helps him. I think that when you start looking over your shoulder, then obviously it's probably too late by now, and that's what, whenever you guys are on K Chris's show, and that's what Damian said. Hey, he's the fast. Yeah, he's fast, but he's the slowest guy in the room when he's thinking. So it's not helping there. And I think that now when you're overthinking it and you're worried about making a mistake, and maybe it's because Venables is so in your face. Some guys can handle it, some guys can't. There was a guy in the comments the other day that said that he had played college football, and there was a lineman like that there was always somebody in your face, and he couldn't handle that. I don't think that BV is going to stop doing that. So, maybe a move, maybe not from the linebackers altogether, maybe just move into an outside linebacker. But even there, I don't know where it looks like McCullough. They were just asking you what you think about Deshaun McCullough. To me, he looks great too. I mean, we're talking about a former freshman All-American. And I think that playing the will position for him is not a bad place. He looked really good. I love Deshaun McCullough. That guy's a stud. But again, there's a lot of these guys that are just kind of in the way, and there's becoming a roadblock there. So it makes you kind of wonder where that's going to end up being.
Yeah, I love McCullough. I think McCullough as a cheetah, I really, and we talked about this on the pod quite a bit. Him straight line going downhill was fantastic. Even him as a Willie backer, where his designation and pass coverage is a little more defined, right? He's playing a little more of a linebacker in pass coverage, right? So he's buzzing the flats. He's maybe staying with a guy across the middle. He's doing things where his length and his physicality are impactful. Whereas at that cheetah position, you're sometimes asked to cover a guy one-on-one, right? You're in a situation where you've got to handle a player who's probably more athletic than you. So I think he can do both. I think he's a player who is so flexible because he's very long. When he got to Oklahoma, he worked on his feet. That was my concern when he was being recruited out of Indiana, is I thought he was a great rush piece off the edge. I thought he was a guy who could be very disruptive if you used him in almost a Nick Bonito style role. I thought he could be fantastic. But him playing in space, and we even saw it a little bit last year, he struggled in space a little bit, which is why they went Dolby in a lot of spots over McCullough, especially late in the year. And I think they found something with that. And Dolby is, Venables early on, his cheetah at Clemson was Ryan Carter. I believe that was his name, who was 5'9", 195 pounds, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't a big, long athlete. He just played the position well. And Venables over the years has had different guys play that spot. He's had different players, right? Roy Williams was kind of the first player, and then there was initially the kind of the Roy back, but just a defender who you could put anywhere on the field and have them be impactful. It changes how an offense has to prepare for you. But I think McCullough, he's got tremendous upside. He is a draftable player, and if you look across the defense, maybe that's the most glaring change, is that there are not only draftable guys at every position group, which we couldn't say that, a couple of years ago, but there are top draft guys at every position group, guys who are going to be, first, second, third round type players. And that's just a stark contrast from where they were before.
Yeah. And I think, we talk about it all the time, but coming into the SEC, this was, to me, what this staff has done in such a short period of time, because of if you think about back to where this program was at, Lincoln tried to set fire on the way out. There was no two ways around it. He tried to set fire on the way out. Offensively, you almost knew that they were going to be okay, though. They were going to find a way there. But that's not where your biggest issue was ever going to be in the SEC. And I would argue that's why Lincoln decided to split, that he knew that what he was doing wasn't going to play there. And I don't know that it's going to play in the Big Ten either. But that being said, I just think that when you look at this big difference, and it's such a great job that these guys have done to get this team SEC ready, and that because you better have guys that are NFL caliber athletes if you're going to go and play at a high level in the SEC, right?
Oh, yeah, man. If you, especially across the line of scrimmage, but the speed difference, like when you go back to when Oklahoma played Georgia in 2017, and you saw Oklahoma rolled out I don't think it could be understated. They rolled out a historically good offense. That offense but with the level of guys who went high in the draft, who are like big time playmakers on Sunday still right now, that offense was incredible.
Yeah.
The fact that Georgia was able to, now granted, they still hung 50 plus points on the Bulldogs, so take this with a grain of salt. But we saw that they had the level of athlete on defense that could make that extra play. And when you're playing in Alabama, when you're playing at Georgia, when you're playing, now, Tennessee has improved their recruiting. Florida, they're going to have an upswing at some point, right? When you go into this conference and you're trying to compete week in and week out, if you don't have Jimmys and Joes that are bigger, faster, and more explosive, and you're constantly trying to compete with one hand tied behind your back, which was what Lincoln would have been doing, especially on the line of scrimmage,
banging his head against the wall, saying we're going to outscore everybody, and this shit don't work.
It doesn't work. It will never work, especially at the championship levels, and we've seen it every time. We've seen that style of play struggle against a Utah who plays, they just don't have the athletes, but they play an SEC brand.
Absolutely. Kyle Whittingham's an unbelievable coach.
Unbelievable coach. And that, when it comes to championship football, that generally wins, right? And we saw the attrition as Stoops' regime left Oklahoma and Riley's position decisions started infiltrating the depth chart more. At a certain point, we saw the program just get to a point where it was unrecognizable from a physicality standpoint, from a draftable player standpoint, and you're not going to win in the SEC with that.
Yeah. Listen, that's where I've just been, and that's why a lot of it, we were talking yesterday about this, the blatant disrespect for Coach Venables and Oklahoma coming in. I mean, that beat Texas, but everybody's talking about how well Texas is prepared and ready to go in the SEC, but Oklahoma isn't. Now, Texas definitely got the training wheel schedule. We know that. But I think that even may work in Oklahoma's schedule because you're immediately going to get battle tested, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Alabama in year 1 and year 2 now, and then you've got Ole Miss at a time that they feel like that they're in an opportunity. They have an opportunity to take a step forward. You got LSU on the road at nighttime, probably at the end of the season. Not to mention Mizzou. I don't really think that much of Missouri, but they looked good last year. They're supposed to be one of those teams that challenges in there. You're going to go up against Tennessee and a good-looking quarterback. But I think the best thing about Tennessee last year was the way that they ran the football and the way that they played on the defensive line. There's no two ways around it. Clearly their quarterback play was trash, but I think that they were very, very good in the trenches, which is what you got to do. And I don't look at this as there's anyone out there that's going to have a defensive line that's, well, maybe one or two teams in the SEC that might be better on the defensive line. None that I feel like are loads better, and we definitely should be able to stack up. The offensive line, look, as you said, Big Bill putting another guy in the first round. Mm-hmm. We've got a super chat here from King Co. All facts. He says bold prediction, but I think Sexton will be Bill's third straight first rounder. And is it just me, or does Sexton look like a white Caden Green? Them dudes look like twins.
That was great.
Hey man, he's definitely. I think that he's taken over a leadership role for sure on that offensive line, which you needed to have. They're able to move him around and have him. They've been talking about him helping out with Joshua Bates, But yeah, I think that you've noticed even since his freshman year that he was that guy. Look at what he did against one of the best defensive linemen in the country in the Cheetos Bowl, against Florida State. He looked really good. If it not for injury last year, he was going to be one of those starters. So as we've talked about, there's definitely a new offensive line. It's all new. But, thinking they're going to be bad, it's not. I don't agree with that. You're seeing a bunch of guys that are up over 300 pounds now. They're getting, a bunch of, I just saw on Twitter, I think a few minutes ago, they've got another visit coming from an in-state guy, 6'5", 280. We're talking about big-time offensive line talent, still in line for a 5-star tackle. And then we got the kids that they've already got in the fold for the 25 class. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried about the offensive line when I've got Big Bill Bedenbaugh in that seat, coaching those guys up. You get a little concerned about how long it takes to mesh. You don't want it to be week 5 before that happens. But when you got a guy like that, it's coming, right?
Yeah, and I would argue, man, he had those moments too. Under Riley, it felt like it was a little less of a thing in those early when he was transitioning, where Riley became OC, right, and Beedenbow
Yeah.
was still the O line coach. It felt like the meshing took place a little quicker, and I would argue, man, a lot of that comes from just not having competitive depth and
Yeah, yeah,
not
no
having
doubt.
guys pushing other players, right? So seeing now,
The defensive
now,
line not being that good, so you don't. So what
yeah,
you're seeing in the regular season is a lot better than what you're seeing in practice, which isn't the case anymore, right?
no, it's not the case. You're getting better quality work. You're getting, Damien's talked about it on the podcast a lot. He said practices, he was defended by Roy, tons of times. He said, and that
Yeah.
was he said that was his hardest matchup he would face in the week, right?
Oh
When
yeah.
Michael Thompson and Derek Strait and Roy Williams are the players you're seeing in practice, that game's gonna be a piece of
Yeah.
cake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you weren't at that level, right? You just didn't have the competitive depth on both sides
Yeah.
of the football. And now you're at a spot where you can be more choosy with your transfer portal. You can go out and get the elite guys, which is the formula that Beanbo has chosen to take, right? I'm a big fan of the Hickman kid out of SMU. I think
Me
he's
too.
a stud, right? I actually
Important piece to bring in, right? Important
very
piece to bring
important.
in.
I have a kid who, let's just say there's a training connection with another young man who I know, and he's a stud, and he's coming to take somebody's job. Like he is about it. So really good to see that. But even I guess it's Waywu, however you pronounce that, he's gonna look very
Jesse's
good.
looked really good. Yeah, yeah. He's definitely looked really good. He's the guy. You can tell he's the guy.
And I love Bates, man. I thought Bates
Yeah.
was going to have a chance to be a real stud. He's got the mentality, and you're seeing that mentality earlier. When Savion Bird needs to be, and then this is kind of on my soapbox, right? But when you're needing a guy like Savion Bird, who was not the most reliable, the possibly had some off the field issues, right? When you have a guy like him and he needs to be your energy piece for you to bring the noise when you're out there on the field, and if he's not on the field, your energy as an offensive line takes a massive dip, then you have a leadership and a culture problem. And that starts with who you're picking as your players. And
Right.
I think Bimbo, his numbers have gotten better in the recruiting class, in the recruiting cycles, right? He's not going and getting 1, 2, 3 guys in a class. He's able to fill the cupboard a little better. And I think the evaluation process that is taking place is far better. I think there's more resources being put to that because they
Yeah.
know championship football, that's what's going to win at the end of the day.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, let's skip over to that side and talk a little bit about the offense. I mean, the line, obviously, I think that, and one thing to kind of put a book in on that part of it is, when you started hearing early all the domination and stuff like that, one-on-ones, first of all, it's not really fair to pick that part to destroy an offensive lineman for, because it's not a one-on-one game. The line works as a unit, number one. So you got to kind of judge them all together. The second part, and the part that I've kept saying whenever I say everybody calm down, because look, if you go up against wave after wave of stud D linemen day after day after day, and not to mention your edge guys and linebackers that might be rushing, and you take a beating for a while, you're either going to do something about it to get better, or you're going to fall off the out of the depth chart. That's just all there is to it. But there's enough depth in there that, and they're so competitive, I think that, and this is what the biggest part that I love about what I'm seeing from these guys is, you hear it all the time. They're talking a lot of shit. They're fighting. They're fighting out there. They're competitive. They want to play hard. They're hitting hard. I mean, again, when you've got a freshman out there knocking the hell out of Bauer Sharp like that, and I thought Joshua Bates is going to get in a fight with them to start with that.
100%.
Which, great thing to have happen. Let them fight. This is a good time to do it. The best football teams, they get after it. They'll love each other later, but they're going to get after it whenever they're between the lines. They're going to get out there, and the pads are going to be popping, and it's going to be competitive. When you have competition like that, it has to make you better. Has to make you better. You know?
Yeah,
So,
no question, man. Yeah, there's no question. And when when the physicality dips so much that guys aren't improving, you don't have that exponential improvement. You don't have that trajectory that's predictable in an off season. Then, as you kind of noted, you've got to just rely on the season to get here, and hopefully you're good by Texas. Well, they don't have that luxury because Tennessee's in week 4. Right? You
right.
don't have the
Yep.
luxury to slow play it.
Hey, look, Willie Fritz is going to bring a team. He's going to bring a team with him. He's another one of those coaches that he can do more with less, you know. So, you know, you get to Houston, it's probably not going to take him quite as long to flip it, and it didn't take him long to flip it at Tulane either. But he's gonna bring a team that's ready to go. So I think week 3, you better be rocking and rolling. Or is it week 2 that they play them? Anyway, I don't think that you really have a lot of time in this anyway, but absolutely, you get up against Tennessee and your offensive line's not looking good, it's going to be hard for especially a true sophomore, first-year starting quarterback in Jackson. Tell me what you thought about him. I know that, you know, some people were like, well, he only hit 10 and 20. I also saw him make some smart plays, throwing the football away, spiking it, doing some stuff like that, and you had a couple of drops. But you didn't see him turn the football over. You saw great footwork as far as I was concerned. What were your impressions of the quarterback room?
Yeah, man. I mean, you take away the throwaways. I want to say he was something like, I want to say it was like 10 of 16, 10
Yeah.
of which is a little more along the lines of where you want to be. And
Yeah.
we've seen it in the
Yeah,
past, right? We've seen Tyler go out there and have a so-so spring game. We've seen Baker go out there and have a so-so spring game. So tough to tell, but what you can see, you know, as we talked about, like the one-on-ones being valuable when it comes to certain positions and evaluating, is the way he's moving. He looks like he's put a little bit more size on. He's a little bit more a well-built, a sturdier fella, if you will. But man, he's hitting guys in stride. Some of those passes, the passes to Burks, were not just were they perfect, but they were in a position where he didn't have to break stride, didn't have to come back for the ball. They were well timed. He got it where it needed to be. But the thing that I love and where I think his game is going to elevate, and this was my issue with the offense under Levy, and even my issue with Gabriel, and where I thought OU left a lot of hay to be made. And it's really twofold. One, you know, that first season and then kind of the half season, because you had to give Emmett Jones a chance to get his system in and build that culture, was the swing passes, the bubbles, the quick game, if you will, was just never there because Gabriel he did not have the release and the velocity on the ball to keep that defender that's unblocked from having that extra step of an advantage. And that's not a knock on Gabriel because he played fantastic.
Oh, no, smart head, you know, and played with moxie. I mean, I love me some Dylan Gabriel. 100%. The fact is, this is a different guy. This is a different level of athlete, and you're going to get things out. I think really the only bad ball I saw him throw out was the first one, you know, and it wasn't even that bad, but it just wasn't great. You know what I mean? And it almost looked like a Dylan ball. But then you started seeing balls that were hitting him in stride. He overthrew somebody, you know, and then that one to Burks was like, yeah, I probably should have laid out for it, though. And I mean, honestly, you know, if you can overthrow Burks, I mean, that's an arm, bro. That's an arm. So
the ball looks different coming out of his hands. It has one of the most impressive plays that I saw was a play that they tried to run last year against Oklahoma State, and that's that little that's the quick game out to I think they were going right to left, and they were on the right hash, and they're just throwing it to Burks quickly out in space. I have it over there posted on X at BWise Fitness. Go follow the X. And Bauer Sharp gets a fantastic block. But because the ball got there so quickly, the backer that's left unblocked has no chance. And if that ball is just a beat too late, that backer now has the advantage. And it still might go for 3 yards. Instead, that play ended up going for, I believe, a first down and plus, right? And when your quick game is able to do that, which was what Baylor was so effective with, right? Bryce Petty, for the disadvantages and certain things he had, his quick game and his ability to get the ball out was great and let athletes play in space. Baker the same way. Kyler was the same way. You had an advantage on those plays, and I think now with Jackson, you have that advantage again.
Yeah, definitely. And then on top of that, you got a kid in Michael Hawkins that looks like, if need be, he's ready. You talk about an athlete, and obviously he's got good athlete genes. Another guy that probably played with Mack, right? And his father, Mike Sr., defensive back guy.
Yeah, I believe there was a little bit of crossover with that. Yep.
Should have been, right? I think so. Yeah. So, but I mean, you're talking about a kid that he's polished. You don't see, and talk about speed. This is where he's got speed. He reminds you a lot of what you were going to get out of Kyler, or what you got out of Kyler, which he could throw it. I mean, and it's that flick of the wrist, that same arm talent that you see from Jackson. I don't know that you have a ton of drop off there, if you have any, if you were to have Jackson go down. Obviously, Casey came in. They brought Casey for insurance on that, to where I think that I've been saying I think he's that emergency break, last guy come off the bench in the case of the game that the guy gets hurt in. I think if he's hurt for any amount of time, you probably end up seeing Michael Hawkins.
Agreed. I think Casey, when you go into game one, Casey's probably your backup. It was the same deal with, when you got Booty and Bevel on there, but everybody knew if Dylan got hurt, which we saw, Jackson was going to be your quarterback, right? There was no question, right?
Right, no doubt.
There was no doubt, right? Jackson was your guy going forward. He's your guy for the future. Let's get him the reps. So in any case, I thought Hawkins played fantastic, man. I thought he looked.
And he did not have the time that you were getting if you were Jackson too, right?
Yeah. No, he didn't. There was a couple plays where one of my favorite plays was actually one where Caden Woolard stood out, where he feels that pressure, sees it, and Ford was going to lay him out if this were a real game. And the blue jersey wasn't on. Ford had a just easy hit, and he spun out of it and got the ball thrown away. It was a great throwaway. There was no chance. It wasn't going to be intentional grounding. He got the ball where it needed to be. He was way more explosive than even I predicted. I knew he was going to be an explosive, fast player.
He's completely underrated. Absolutely.
Yes. I think from his junior year to his senior year in high school, he made some massive jumps. And I think he's made another massive jump from senior year, high school to now. And especially too, I know he had some distractions with transferring, and there was just other things going on in his life at the high school level. And there's a lot of pressure.
It got a little weird at Allen, didn't it? Right before he left, it's from what I understand. Yeah,
it did. But man, his arm and his, not necessarily his long speed, that really wasn't what got me, man. His burst when he sticks a foot in the ground, that's more impactful at the quarterback position than having the long speed.
Right.
Baker never had
getting out of the way, and then
100%
ability.
That's what made Baker so great. Baker's short area is going to beat anybody. He's going to beat the guy who's maybe running a 4.4, 4.3 because he has so much pop. Now his long speed's not going to be there, but that burst, man, if you have it and you also have the vision downfield to be able to keep the ball in play, man, you got a serious quarterback there.
And that was the difference between like Baker and Kyler, I think. And I think Kinko saying again, could Jackson Hawkins be Baker, Kyler 2.0, back-to-back elite quarterbacks? I think it's no doubt.
Yeah.
And then, like Stink says, then you got Sperry coming as well in this class. And you want to talk about another kid with arm talent. I mean, I saw, it's just been disrespect throughout the country when it comes to, you had the guy that was on Barrett Salee, when he was talking about that Oklahoma wasn't going to get those Heisman type of quarterbacks. They got them. They already have them. You know, what are you talking about? You know, if they're not able to go out there and win right away and whatever, they're not going to get the kind of offensive players that you needed to get when you had Lincoln. First off, they're beating Lincoln in every recruiting way imaginable. They're getting guys that he wanted. Taylor Tatum, I believe, you know, let's talk about running backs a little bit. You saw great things out of Hicks. You're also seeing, you know, a situation. I was kind of surprised that Javonte, after not playing, didn't end up in the portal. I'm glad he didn't, because that's great. But man, you want to talk about a room that is absolutely deep with talent. You're not going to have a problem at quarterback. We know you don't really have a problem at receiver. We've been talking about what you have there. But this running back room could be the most important piece to this whole thing, particularly having a young quarterback. Making it easy for him is you got a stable of guys that can get after it.
Oh, the 100%. And last year, you know, this was a kind of a through line on our show. What was, there were a lot of times that, you know, Bill Beatonbow got he caught a lot of heat for the run game not being able to take off, man. But when you went back and watched the film, a lot of it was not the offensive line. There was a lot of plays where the hole was there, the gap was there,
hit the right spot, or they hesitated.
Yeah, and you saw the run game take off when Sawchuk got healthy, right? You saw them start having something to build on because Sawchuk's just a better back. His vision is better. Right. I know he dealt with a hamstring and some other stuff kind of all season long. So
that's the only thing you've ever worried about with Gavin is really just staying healthy. If you can be available for us, I think that that's the case again. What about Taylor Tatum? I would tell you, watching him, I think that this guy is another level of player than most people even realize. That you think he's going to be a red shirt? I don't think he's going to be a red shirt. I don't think you can keep him off the field.
So I do not think he is going to be a redshirt player. I think for Oklahoma and what they're wanting to do, I think he's a guy who I don't know if he plays to start the year, but I definitely think he's going to be a rotational piece down the stretch. I think he's going to be an absolute massive factor for the team. I think he's a guy who Hicks has shown some. Then I think he's a guy whose spring game was probably the highlight of the game, right?
Agreed. I think he looks great.
He looked fantastic. I know Damian was very high on him.
Yep.
But in terms of guys coming in, you know, Tatum he's a fringe 23 mile per hour kind of guy. So he's a guy who, when he cuts loose, man, he's going to have a shot to be a breakaway threat. I know
Destroys angles, right? Destroys angles.
Yeah, man. He's a player who really has a shot to be a factor. I was very high on him. I thought he was their most important get for the class, especially going into the SEC. We've seen it with Georgia and we've seen it with Alabama. If you don't have an elite running back and you don't have an elite wide receiver, you are not going to win a national championship, right? And I know people have argued good O-line, good quarterback play. Go back and watch the teams that have won titles. If you
got to have that guy that can carry the load there. Yeah,
100%. Absolutely. You need guys who can make plays, right? And that's why a Burks and a Tatum Hicks Sawchuk combo is so important.
Yeah, and I think that you have to have those guys, and I think that what you're looking at with, you know, Devon Mitchell down the road, I think he's, you know, maybe we're a little ways away from seeing him. I think second half of the season you could see a lot out of him. I think Bauer Sharp's a good spot for that for now, but I do think that when you look at that receiver room, and yeah, we're talking, if Andrell Anthony comes back with the speed that he had before he went down, right? Pairing him with Dion, wow. And then you got Brennan Thompson, more speed there. But then you talk about Nick Anderson and you talk about Jaden Gibson, who are tall, get up there and fight for the football guys. Where's the holes on this offense? You know, the only question you're going to have is Jackson not going to turn the football over? Are you going to be in? Is the line going to keep him clean? Because it's a new line. But really, as we said, I think you put all this together, they're in a lot better shape than what a lot of people are giving them credit for. And I just think that if you get the kind of play out of Jackson that you could, and you get a running game starting with Gavin Sawchuk, obviously, but then, with Hicks, and then look, if Javonte can be what he was in year one, where he's that hard runner between the tackles, that kind of thunder lightning guy, great. But I don't think you're keeping Taylor Tatum off the field. And then, the guys that you got coming in this class too, this is a good problem to have. But yeah, you're right. The offensive line, of course it's a line of scrimmage league. But what happens when you get through the line of scrimmage? You better be a take it off the top guy, because it's also the speed league.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the SEC. It's the speed league. I mean, they have all the speed from all the guys in the speed state and everywhere around there. This is what they do. So you better have those guys. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to have a back, and this is what it just comes down to at that position. Not every player is getting blocked, and not every play is going to be perfect. If you don't have a guy who can shake one player in the hole, which is really what we saw all last season early on, right? We saw that one guy who had the chance to make the play consistently make the play. And if you don't have that, you're not going to pick up, the 6, 7, 8 yard runs that you need in order to continue to move the sticks. It's going to be 2 and 3 yards at a time. Right. And that was the issue with Major. I'm sure wish him well now, but he just was never going to be the back that Oklahoma needed in that regard. And that's why there was such a big transition.
The way he looked early was great, but when he started getting nicked up, and that's the concern that I have for Javonte, that I hope that it's not a mental thing with him now.
I do too. That is my concern, and that is what I think maybe was the biggest impact into why we've seen his game just change a little bit, right? You get injured, especially if it's a lower body thing, man, it changes how your foot strikes the ground. It changes your confidence in being able to, go right to left, go left to right. It factors in a ton. And I've seen it up close. I've seen it watching people from afar. It will literally change you as an athlete, especially, man, if maybe you weren't fully in on the rehab, maybe you didn't spend enough time on the strength side, maybe there was some other thing, maybe you just weren't all in terms of the recovery and what you needed to do in order to get through it. Man, I feel for a guy like that who maybe struggled in that regard. So hopefully it's something that he'll be able to recover from, man.
Yeah, I hope so too. And look, the fact that he's willing to stay around and compete when the room just gets better and better all the time, because as Hank's talking about, X is going to shorten somebody's Saturday with a collision. I don't think you're wrong, Hank. That's Xavier Robinson. You may wait to see him for a year, because I think just to where they're at loaded wise as far as the room is concerned.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I mean, if he turns into that hard yard guy when you need that yard, and I think that when you come in at 240 or already, and then they get you down to 230, and it's muscle, he might be that guy. So, yeah, I think it's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to that backfield if they get it, if they make a conscious decision to run the ball in situations like that. And I think that that's the biggest thing that you got to do and that's going to make it easier on Jackson. This is why I'm glad to see, Seth Luttrell calling plays. To me, I know that Jeff Levy's considered one of the better guys when it comes to offensive coordinators. He didn't have the amount of success as a play caller that Luttrell had when he got here. So Luttrell has been through it a lot more. I think that you see a lot more running out of him, more where you're going to get that H-back back into the – I love the H-back guy. Those guys are my favorites from really the Lincoln era. That was my favorite thing was those guys. You think about B. Hall and of course, Dimitri Flowers and guys like that just did other things because of that offense. I'm glad to see that again, and I'm glad to see that they're going to go a little less tempo, it seems like, and kind of draw that game out, because that's what you have to do in order to win in this league. Let's get to some of these
Yeah, man, go.
here. Who's faster, Tatum or Gavin? I think
Gavin Sawchuk. Depends on what you're running. Man, if you're, I don't know, indoor 60, I'd probably take Gavin. No, I would take on a track race. I would take Gavin, but I think on the football field, I think they're pretty. They're right in line. On the track, I'd probably take Gavin.
Burks and Anthony together will be a nightmare for SEC secondaries, absolutely. And I mean, again, I don't think that you can stop talking about Nick Anderson or Jaden Gibson either, or any of these other guys. I mean, you still have guys like, look, Jaquez Petaway is another one of those speed guys, but he's also big enough that he can come down with those tough footballs. I think you're going to end up seeing some of him at some point this year. Look, the young kid from Odessa, Texas looked really good the other day as well. You know what I'm talking about. It's man, I always forget his name too. But look, there's no problems in the receiver room, it doesn't seem like. And then Sooner in Texas saying, Jason, I'm in your camp now. Got into a scuffle with the Mizzou fans today on YouTube. They are beyond obnoxious and need to be smashed. We have to beat Mizzou. They've forgotten their place, is where I'm guessing he's saying. They definitely have. Mizzou sucks. They've always sucked. I don't care about Mizzou at all. I think that they're gonna. I love all the shit they're talking, because it's now, if Oklahoma was ever gonna overlook you, it's never happening now.
No, not now. You know, and that's what happened in the there is when Mizzou would play Oklahoma pretty tough. It just always felt like one of those games. It's like 6 p.m. on Fox Sports Net. It's coming off of a game against Kansas State or whatever, whoever they had played the previous week. Right. And just one of those funky games. It's not going to be in the SEC, man. That is going to be the game that they got circled.
Junior year, whenever they blew it and they were number one and against Missouri.
Oh man,
killed me.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the only time that you ever saw that. I mean, they've got about the same kind of record against Oklahoma as freaking Okie Light. So spare me the Mizzou talk. Spare me the Mizzou talk.
Keep it moving.
SEC sleeping on OU is foolish. Agreed, Jet. Sooner in Texas got to beat them this season. If you don't, they'll go from really annoying to flat out awful people. They escaped us. They suck. Yeah. And we know Jackson can take the top off. We should be getting box loaded on us. Yeah, I think so. I think that, but if you do that, then what? You know, the box gets loaded, then good luck keeping up with those guys running down the field. Yeah, a lot of people saying Mizzou's the target. K-State should have won that. Putting Bill and Seth back together. Putting Bill and Seth back together was a smart move. Yeah, I agree.
I totally agree. I think that was the move of the offseason to me, was going with a guy who you don't want to force your freshman quarterback in his second year to have to learn a brand new offense. So you go with a guy like Seth, who has a good relationship with Jackson. It doesn't change the style of recruiting, right? You're going into the SEC. Maybe in 2 years they shift from Seth, right? Maybe they see how it looks and they do a pivot as you bring Hawkins in. You got Sperry coming in. But for right now, I thought the move of the offseason, even above the portal guys, was going with Luttrell, right? It felt like a guy who was just the perfect coach for right now, right? It might not have been the best name out there, but for what they need.
Yeah, I mean, but if you go back to, what tarnished that? Because he was one of the hot names for, until he took the job. I think that taking the North Texas job may have tarnished him a little bit.
A little bit.
You don't have the kind of players at North Texas that you're getting at Oklahoma. So, and they put together an offense that was explosive down there. I think it was crazy for them to fire him. What are you expecting him to do? But I do believe that when you start, look, in the end, the bottom line is what he and Joe John came in there and saved a recruiting class on the offensive side that you really need to keep. You had to keep it. If you lose a Taylor Tatum, if you lose a Devon Mitchell, which if there was a question, I think that may have been it. You lose that guy. That's not great. Again, you add in Emmett Jones, that's unbelievable at recruiting and getting these guys to come in. But I think Joe John, you got to give a lot of credit to Joe John and Seth. If Michael Hawkins doesn't come, you probably don't get a lot of them to come. And they made sure that they secured him first. Hawkins felt good with him. That was good. It was a smart move on BV's part, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, it was just a no-brainer decision. You don't crush the momentum that you've got. You allow the continuity to stay, right? That was kind of the unsung aspect of the Clemson program as Dabo built it up, was they kept such great continuity as a coaching staff, and they let it marinate a little bit, right? 6-7 as a Sooner fan that first year was awful, right? Yeah. But yeah. You had a very honest assessment of where you were, right? That one of the worst things that could have happened was, I think, Oklahoma go out there and have a little success, and maybe some guys end up being maybe the competition wasn't where it needed to be, and now you're a year behind in terms of evaluations and guys like that. So I think for OU, of course you want to go out there and win games, man, but sometimes it pays to just know where you are, know where you sit on the totem pole, man. And it worked out too that OU had 2 years in the Big 12 to get this thing right. And now they're going into the SEC with the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Skill guys who, I know you touched on Anderson and Anthony and Burks, man. I would argue, I don't know if there is a receiving core that is completely better or more well-rounded, more complete, man. When you have those guys as your main dogs, that there is nowhere to shade. Everybody's on an island at that point. And we saw what happened with Oklahoma last year when Anthony went down. It really impacted the offense, and I would say probably lost OU 2 football games. Losing Anthony was that impactful.
I think so, and I think that Jeff stopped calling the game the same way for sure without him. Because I would tell you that there's those 2 football games, it was definitely the offense's inability to make a play, but also I thought that the games were called badly. And it feels like to me that Seth Luttrell is going to have a more even approach. And, I felt like there were times that you didn't know what Jeff Lebby's goal was. Yeah. What he was trying to do. That's just the way I felt about it. And I mean, where the Oklahoma State game took a turn to me was when you put Javonte in, he hadn't been in a month, and you do a direct snap the first play, and I just didn't understand it. It just didn't. It didn't fit what you were doing up to that point. Yeah, I didn't understand the point of that. You're killing them with the stretch zone. Why bother with that shit? You don't have to do anything cute. Just go run the ball. Yeah,
that's inexperience. That is the inexperience piece, kind of live and right in front of you. Absolutely. And we saw Riley go through it. Luckily he got to cut his teeth a little bit at East Carolina, but when he got to Oklahoma, he had to learn from Stoops that, hey man, this is Oklahoma. You got athletes in different spots.
You have to do all that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Use your running backs, brother. We got guys. Let's utilize them. Let's leverage that. And you saw growth from him over time. And when say what you want about
I think that Lincoln's the best offensive coach is because of the way he runs out of the air raid.
Yes, 100%. 100%. There's ways to stop everything. But he really learned and figured out how to cut his teeth with running the football and being timely with calls. And that was just something where Lebby he never quite had it. His best drive he ever called was that final drive of the Texas game, and he's really not matched it since.
Yeah, and it almost feels like that might have been scripted up a little bit, but really, I think that he knew. I think that Dylan knew what to run there and went in and got it done there as much as anything. But this I hope Brent allows Zach Alley to call the defense. It feels like that's happening.
He 100% will. I think Brent's going to oversee that, but I think I think
Sure.
Ali is going to be the guy calling plays, 100%.
Right. And I think that's the reason why they haven't made Zach available to the media, because they don't want to have him having to answer those questions. And you know, I think if anything, there's probably a little gamesmanship involved in that. You make everybody think about it a little more. You know, I think there's a point where you need to let Zach talk, but as long as he's talking out on the field, who cares? You know, because I think it does free up Venables to be able to kind of do some more stuff with the program and be more of that CEO like they were talking about. What's up with special teams? I know we got a great coach from SDSU. Was that just because it was the spring game? See, I would tell you that, and I'm going to pass this one to Barry too, but my opinion is what I said after the game. I feel like it's been neglected for so long that 15 practices was not going to give you what you needed.
Yeah.
As far as improvement is concerned, you've got the rest of the summer and the fall camp, but you know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you've got to have players, especially if I imagine he's probably specifically talking kicking game, right?
Yeah.
I think you've got to have players who are fully bought in to being near NFL guys at the position, and that means near NFL work, right? And you know, fans, I know Burkich had his struggles, but I actually had some conversations with Burkich at a different point. He had followed my stuff, and we had gone back and forth on some. Burkich was into the craft of kicking, and he appreciated every single aspect of that on his own. The buy-in was there. He understood technique, history, the strength and mobility you have to have as a kicker. What are the integral pieces to being successful at that position? I like the Florida State kicker. I think Keltner, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like him. I thought he struck the ball the best. I thought he had the best consistency. I thought he was the guy who, long term, I have a feeling he's going to be your fella. I think he's going to end up being the guy kicking the ball. You know, you're going to have misses in games. You know, ideally, you want as few as possible, but you're going to have misses. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to end up being the guy. Punting, punting I actually thought looked okay. I think
definitely looks like it did last year.
Yeah. So I think, and it's a spring game, so on that it is kind of tough to gauge, right? There's no pressure, right? You want to strike the ball well, but to me, I think what I thought was the most maybe empowering thing for the special teams unit, man, is that Peyton Bowen is possibly going to be returning punts. Seeing him back there catching a couple balls, I've said it on X. It is bookmarked, and people have said it. I think he ends up breaking
special as a returner, man. No doubt.
Special. I'm talking, and you guys can quote me on this, hot take it, cut this up, hold me to it. I think he is Antonio Perkins level talented when it comes to returning kicks. I've not seen a guy out of high school with the vision and the wiggle and the ability, because returning punts is not a speed thing. It is a close space acceleration vision thing. And it is understanding timing and angles, but also anticipation. Where you are on the field, there's so much that goes into it that it's almost like real-time math being done in a physical form, right? Your body's having to equate. You're having to take in all these variables and adjust on the fly. And for me, Peyton Bowen, when I watched him in high school, man, he checked all the boxes of what you want in a player like Perkins, a Devin Hester, a guy who just has the gift to be able to return kicks, man. And to me,
that's why he can run with receivers too, as a defender too. You know, he could be a corner if you wanted him to be a cover corner. He could do that. I mean, we saw him running with Andrell Anthony in the spring game last year. So you know, I'm excited about Peyton Bowen. I know we hadn't got to and we didn't get to see a ton of him in the spring game either, but I think you're going to see a lot of him this year. When he was in the game as a true freshman, good things were happening. I love the idea of that. I also think Jacquez Petaway would be another good returner. I think that what you got to do as a new coordinator is, because I've been saying, I feel like it's when you don't have a guy that's dedicated, that's his job. then you got this coach pitching in and this coach pitching in, but it's not the priority to where you're out there heavily recruiting. Hey, we need you to. So for a guy like Petaway, maybe he doesn't get a ton of time at receiver early. Maybe he's in a rotation, but not getting the number of snaps he wants. You got an opportunity to come in and make a big play on special teams. This is where having that guy that's all he cares about is special teams is going to come in handy, because it's not going to be an afterthought anymore. It can't be an afterthought anymore. You have to have all three phases. That's just kind of where I'm at on it. But I love that. I think you're right. I think they've got guys that they need. And I think the kicking game will be okay. I mean, you're going to miss a couple field goals here and there, but as long as we don't see 10-yard punts, we're going to probably be okay.
Yeah, you got to win. You got to win that.
Need a ton of field goals, right?
100%. We got to win that piece of the game.
Yeah. The hurry up and punt offense might work at Baylor and Ole Miss. It doesn't work at Oklahoma. I agree, Jet. I hope Stoney and Jaden light up Caden Green. Yeah, me too. When Stoops retired, ODU needed a splash to replace him. They did. Let's go on. Let's see what else we got. Chicken, welcome into the show, my man. Yeah, guys, I really appreciate everybody for coming in. And Barry, I know we've kind of been going for a while, so I want to let you get out of here. But I've been holding you for a little bit. But anything else you wanted to talk about or add to what we've been talking about as far as where your expectations are? Oh, I think one question, we had a direct question for you. I want to make sure I get back to it. Here it is.
Okay.
Nelio said, not familiar with you, but he did subscribe. In your opinion, what's the most anticipated away game, maybe to its end?
Most anticipated away game for this upcoming season? I mean, it's got to be LSU, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and they go to Ole Miss too, I believe.
I think that one's a pretty good one. Underrated, cool.
Very underrated.
And
right? Honestly, man, we'll see how LSU is without Daniel, right? Losing him was huge. You know, it's hard to replace a guy like that. But, you know, Brian Kelly's doing a good job. People had their doubts, man, but he's done a good job recruiting.
Well, and they've got that receiver factory down there that they just try. You may not know who the hell it is yet, but they're going to have a guy. You can bet your ass they're going to have another Malik Neighbors there.
Always.
You know they are. So I think Nuss can spin it. They're going to be good. I think they're going to be better than a lot of people are expecting right away. But I don't know that it really matters. It's going to be a tough place to go play, right? You know, you're talking about the bayou at nighttime. It's haunted down there, man. You got to be careful about Delphi Valley.
OU wearing red in an away game. OU rocking the crimson in an away game is going to be a weird thing. I don't think I don't know that it's been done, right? Because LSU
they do wear white at home, don't they?
They wear white at home. I think that's going to be now that it's their option, right?
Sure.
Maybe, you know, that they get the choice, but they are one of the few teams that has been approved by the NCAA to wear white at home. So I do think it'll be interesting seeing OU. To me, that's one of the more fascinating things, just crimson in the away game.
I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't thought about that. And you're right. I think that's pretty wild because they do wear white at home. So.
Yeah. But, to me, it'll almost for sure be a night game because the SEC plans season TV schedules better than any other conference. They know exactly where to place these dadgum games.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the anticipated one. You know, Tennessee, where OU went to in 2015, they're back in Norman this year. You know, Alabama's going to.
I'm excited about that one too, but just with Josh coming back, you know. Yeah. I think that's going to add something to it as well.
Great storyline. Would have probably been crazier had Stoops still been coaching. Probably a little more wild kind of situation, man. But you know,
they need to patch that shit up, though. They need to patch that shit up. You know,
I agree.
Don't talk to him, Bob. For God's sakes, you know, do something.
I probably know a little. Just there's some stuff to be worked on in that.
I get it, and I remember all that, and I know what you're talking about, and we don't have to get into it here, but I agree. I think that Bob, he's got some stuff he needs to handle there, you know, and Josh could relax a little bit too. You know what I mean? Josh could relax a little bit too. So,
Because man,
you know,
they need to do. I would argue, and this is definitely all kind of off topic, man. But I think Oklahoma needs to figure out a way to do something for him, and maybe it comes after he's, been coaching for a while, and maybe there's certain positions guys kind of get into where things feel appropriate, right? Kevin Durant leaving the Thunder, fans are finally kind of feeling a little better about that situation, right? And maybe time will heal this, but man, I think Oklahoma needs to figure out something to do for him, because you talk about a player who might have been most important for OU's return to success.
No doubt. No doubt.
You got to figure out a way to honor that guy.
I remember watching your show, and Mack was talking about that first the championship year that Josh carried it. The offense carried it for the first half. The second half of the year, you saw the defense picking it up and figuring it out, right? And then year 3, it was the defense. It was a defensive led team, but you had a great offense too.
Yeah,
I think that's where, if you don't have Josh, though, those games where, you had some tough ones that you probably weren't supposed to win, and he came through in some clutch moments. Josh is I'll never forget that. And that's why I think, they need to figure that out. Yeah. Get those guys back together and fix that problem, because you don't want him to, man, it's Josh freaking Heupel, man. Love the guy. I love the guy, So
absolutely, man. But yeah, I think LSU to me is the game. If you're down there, you got the ability to go, man. If I can figure out a way to go, I'm there. To me, that is the number one game I'm looking forward to, from an atmosphere, environment, just new, right? OU has not played there ever. So I think it's huge, man. You got that stinking Tiger that comes out at midfield in the beginning of the game, man. So shoot, you can't beat that.
Yeah, and their fans definitely get wild. And if it's any time past 11 o'clock, they're gonna be greased up. You can believe that shit. He's talking about Neilio saying they played them in Houston a few seasons ago. They weren't clearly at full speed. Their fans just mouthed off to the point it got comical. I'm going to the game, but I'm gonna be quiet. I'm not gonna get into all that stuff with those guys. The bear you in the bayou. Never know. Yeah, Josh is OU royalty. Agreed. Yeah. Oh yeah, Deuce, man, dude. That guy was such a great player. I enjoyed watching him at K-State. Yeah, okay, so one last thing before I let you get out of here. Caleb Williams.
Okay.
First round draft pick last night. I think a lot of people have been pissed off at him this week about something that was said that wasn't said, that he was mad at Oklahoma. He wasn't mad at Oklahoma, folks. He was pissed off at Lincoln because he didn't start him over Spencer. But what are your thoughts about him? Number one pick. I think that we kind of probably saw that in his freshman year, that he was that kind of player. What are your thoughts on Caleb?
I think he's going to end up having NFL success. Mm-hmm. I do think it's going to take a minute. I think, one, you're going to a situation in Chicago, which we've watched them year after year after year have a guy or two and just never be able to make the daggum thing work, man. Right? Aren't they? I think
the Bears have never had that guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
they even screwed. I mean, Cutler had his issues, man, but Cutler was the best guy they've had in a long time, and even he, had his major struggles. I think, if as much as we are Sooner fans, I think we are forced to be honest with ourselves and say that the players who have gone number one, your Kylers and your Bakers, right? There was some struggle there in transition to the NFL game. Baker had some success in that first year, and I know the offensive coordinator, the coaching changes and whatnot.
Sure.
But we saw that.
Well, it's Cleveland, for God's sakes. Yeah.
Yeah. But the offense that Riley ran, the reads are simpler. He was good at getting elite guys who can run that offense, but when you got to the NFL, when things got a little more complicated,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hertz has alluded to it, that a lot of stuff that they ran out of Alabama was a little closer, stuff that Kiffin ran a little
Correct.
closer to what they were doing in the
Well,
NFL.
he's been coaching in the NFL too, so it was a little, a little different for him and good for Jalen. But I
Yeah,
even think that Baker talked about it last year, where he said that Lincoln didn't do himself any favors when it
yeah,
came to the way he did things.
agree.
And that was as honest as you get, because he loves Lincoln. You know what I mean? But I think that you heard that coming out of him. So to me, yeah, I agree with you, and I think that what he I wish he would have developed him more on running smarter. I mean, getting that, hey, this play, hey, we're getting too much pressure on you, and this hero ball stuff. It never felt like he got easy throws for him. Hey, off that third drop, off that third step, the ball's got to come out
Yeah,
right here. Let's get an easy one here, get you back under control. Then you got a guy that one of the best running backs in the country, and Pro Football Focus thought he was the best. He was getting 10 carries a game. 10
yeah,
carries a game. It felt like he was so fixated on getting Caleb another Heisman, which should not ever be your goal. The Heisman cannot be the goal. It's got to be a product of you playing great and your team being very good, right? That's whenever it works out. When it was his goal, and you saw that in his play calling. It's the first time I've ever watched his play calling, and I thought, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean?
yeah. It's tough to know too how much of their struggles against elite competition, how much of it was Caleb, how much of it was the offensive play calling and the things they were trying, the lack of an offensive line. We saw at Oklahoma, even though it was his freshman year, Caleb, that there are still a few, weaknesses. If you get pressure on him, he has great escapability, but the off balance
His deep ball isn't great though. Yeah,
his deep ball is not great. His off balance throws, where the velocity is fine for college, is not going to be fine for the pros, right? And just when he's on balance, he's as good as any. So let me also say that.
Yeah. No, I think he's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think he's fantastic. Yeah.
Agree. But when it comes to this more of the off schedule throws that he's going to try to get to, that's just not going to be there, right? We saw Baker be a whiz in college. That crap didn't work when he got to the pros. It just there wasn't enough space. It wasn't until he figured out, I need to 1, 2, 3 balls out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 balls out, and he figured out how to kind of how to just play the game, right? How to play the pro game. Caleb, I think there's going to be a learning curve, leadership wise. We don't know who he is as a leader yet.
That's my concern about him. I think he can learn whatever you need to teach him, and I think that his talents are going to allow him to have a good learning curve. But my question is his leadership. I think he's a little weird. I think and he comes off a little aloof too, and so I don't know kind of how that plays in that locker room. That's my question about him, right?
Yeah, man. I think when you're dealing with grown men who have, kids and
give a shit about you.
Yeah. Well, what's going on? Yeah. Who is this guy over here who thinks he's all that in a bag of chips? Right. I've been in the league for 15 years and I'm, got a 12, 13-year-old son. I think there's going to be some growing pains with Caleb. I think there's going to be some learning that has to happen, some maturity that has to take place. Even a guy like Baker, we saw it, who Baker we knew was a great leader, but he had to figure out how to lead in the pros, right? And that's to take it back to a guy who we knew had the moxie and that it factor, right? Caleb, say what you want about the nail painting and all the kind of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's whatever. I mean, I think some guys may not love it, but who cares what he does when it comes? But it's just the way some of his mannerisms and the way he handles stuff, and like wears everything right on his face and on his sleeve when things aren't going well. That won't play well I don't think that inspires teammates so much, right?
Agreed. It's a little me oriented, the crying after the games and just the way he kind of, maybe this is a cynical me and maybe this is unfair, probably a little too much psychoanalysis here, but I feel like you can always tell when something is authentic and when you know where the camera is. And I think Caleb far too often knew where the camera was.
I think you just hit the hell on the net, the nail on the
Hell,
head, Barry. I do. I think you do. Yeah, that's some of it isn't. It doesn't feel as authentic as it should be. Again, I think he's a fantastic talent. I think that if anybody's going to make that jump, and look, the truth is that they were smart and traded away the number one last year to get it this year, and then they were able to add another pick in the first round. They added some veteran presence in that locker room that should help him.
Yeah, Romeo Tuesday, that's a pick, man. That to me, that's a high caliber draft pick. You got him at 9.
Oh man, yeah, and I mean you already. Again, they did some stuff in free agency too that was very smart in my opinion. So I love it. I think that, and they went 7-10 last year, so they're not in a terrible position to make a jump if he can be serviceable. He doesn't have to win it by himself, and that's where you're going to find out if he's able to play. Let's make sure we get this guy the ball and do that, and run within a system. And be ready for that. If he can do that, they might take off and look pretty good. I think he's in a better situation than most first picks are when it comes to, what they have on the team. You know what I mean? I don't know about the coaching staff, but I do think that as far as talent's concerned, they're in a decent position there.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, they even with Fields, they weren't necessarily incredibly far off. And I think Caleb he's worth talent-wise probably 2 to 3 extra wins. Just with the arm, the escapability, what he gives you in the run game. He's not a Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is kind of his own beast, and he succeeds in his own way. He's a little more of a bigger version of Kyler Murray, in my opinion. He's a little closer to that, with not as good of a deep ball, but a lot bigger body, right? I don't know. We'll see. Here's Jalen Hurts succeeded. But we know what Jalen still has some things that gets him in trouble in the playoffs. But
he's not a great thrower either. Yeah, it's the same thing that I feel. They're really good at the underneath and the deep ball, but they're not good at the intermediate throws that you got to be able to make at some point, because they're going to take away that other stuff, right?
But Jalen makes up for it though with other things, and my question's going to be
leadership and all that other stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Does Caleb find that balance? And to me, that will dictate his success as to whether he's a flame out in 2 or 3 years, or if he ends up, playing the game for 15 to 20 like a Peyton and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. I think, I'm with you there. I feel like you're going to have to get over that me stuff a little bit. That me stuff is just a little more than. It's going to have to be about more than just yourself. And I think you can be a little divish. I mean, we see Aaron Rodgers. We know you. But there's a level that you're going to have to, you have to keep it at and keep it between there. But again, we're going to see. But I think the overall, again, good night of the first night of the draft, talking about Tyler Guyton and doing what he did. I was excited about that. Man, I appreciate you coming on and kind of breaking down a bunch of stuff. I know we've been going for a while, but I appreciate you hanging with us and talking with us, man.
Man, anytime. I'm down to talk with the Sooner community, to talk with all the folks who have all the different content being created out there, man. It's been so cool to see such a burst and wave of content as OU goes into the SEC and all of these awesome voices, man. I think 2024 and looking into the future, man, it doesn't get any better than, the fans have a real voice now. Right. You have, maybe the more educated fan over here, maybe the guy who's just, got a beer and screaming over here. You got a lot in between. But man, there's so many options to pick from. I think it is important as a community, as long as everybody is coming from a good place, as long as it's all with love, we're going to, banter back and forth, man. But at the end of the day, I kind of like what's getting built here in terms of the content space, quote unquote. So I hate that word sometimes, but the Sooner community, man, I couldn't be happy enough to be on.
It's grown a lot, right? And I think that you've got some unbelievable guys. Obviously, the Unfair Sports crew, love those guys. PG, Chris on the Horns Down. I mean, he's one of the guys that I did stuff with very first. Love him. We have a great time. We do the game after show or after the game show, and we're gonna start that back up this year. Man, we love to work with you and Mack as well. So,
yeah,
man, tell everybody how to find. I'm putting it all in there as we go, but tell everybody how to find you and about some of the stuff you guys got coming up.
Absolutely, man. I saw Sooner in Texas with their comment. The content schedule is going to change. And this is just kind of full disclosure. In this past year, I opened a brand new gym in South Tulsa. So if you are in the South Tulsa area, I got a strength training and performance gym that I am training, athletes, gym pop, we do some injury stuff. We deal with a lot of things up here. So that happened. Damien actually had a big kind of company transition as well, but we still tried to put the stuff out. We're fully on YouTube now, so we've got the stuff there, but we are still posting the audio. But yes, we're moving. We're doing some things that I think you guys are going to like, and it's going to be a little more exposure. It's just been a kind of a long road to get there, so we've been careful with how much we've put out. But we got something coming that's going to be pretty big, pretty cool. In the works. But yeah, at the Barry and Mack Show, it's Barry and Mack SHW on X. You can find me at BWise Fitness, at letter B WISE Fitness, and the Barry and Mack Show everywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, the whole 9 yards. And we are also on YouTube. So go check it out, man.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, we appreciate you coming in again, and we'll definitely get you back on, man. And hey, excited about the season. We've got a bunch of stuff changing too, so format wise I'd love to work with you guys and collab a little more and man, but again, thanks a lot for coming on and appreciated your takes on all this stuff, man.
Absolutely, man. Let's make it happen.
All right, brother, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Barry Wise from the Barry and Mack Show. Make sure you guys get over there and subscribe. They aren't, I mean, they got other jobs that they are making sure that they keep up with that, but I think some of the stuff we talked about a little bit off air, they're going to be adding a lot of stuff to their stuff. And when you talk about the stuff that when they put out a show, their shows are unreal and great they're worth the wait. So loved getting to have him on for us with us tonight, guys. I appreciate you guys as well, all you folks that are in here in the audience, man. We wouldn't do it without you, Chicken, Sooner in Texas, all you guys, Hankster, Jamie Satterfield, Boomer 129, Lance, Jet, Mars Jams, my boy. Appreciate all you guys more than you know. Neilio, as always, our boy, and KC Mo. Love having you on the show. K-State or not, you are good with us all the time. Sooner in Texas, Shabuti. Let's see who else we got. Don't want to miss anybody. Of course, the legend Mike from Sooner Legends podcast. Shout out to him as well. Been putting out some amazing content lately. This, again, we've got, like Barry was just saying, there is a group of content creators out here that are covering Oklahoma football and beyond. And you can't leave out, Ty from Around the Table Sports. Obviously JP and Trav, they put out amazing content as well. This is a strong group of guys. Teddy and Gabe are unbelievably good as well. Love getting to see them. But yeah, look, none of us would be doing that without you guys. Lance Fleury, if I missed you there, want to make sure I said it to you, Fatty, as well. But we wouldn't be doing any of this without you guys, and we appreciate you more than you know. If you haven't already hit that like button, please do make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the program. Go over to our Sooner, the Hall of Fame Sooner Network. It's HOF Sooners on YouTube. We need to get up over 1,000 so I can kind of migrate and do more stuff that's just Oklahoma related there. We really trying to do that for that channel alone. That's a big part of what we're trying to do with the SEC stuff. And I apologize about the No Cap show. I had a guest plan, and because of the draft last night, it ended up kind of not working out. We'll get a lot more regular with that here as we go along. Working on some other stuff too. I want to do a call-in show, folks. if you would call in, we'll do it faceless, all that kind of stuff. Would I need to get a phone number for you guys to call in and be on there, or can you use the StreamYard link? I want to make sure that we have more of you guys, because I love all your comments, but I miss a bunch of them. I just know I do. A great way to make sure that you don't get it missed is to put in a super chat. We've got a few guys that do that, Neil, every time pretty much in here. But become a member of, obviously, our membership, the channel membership. It's just $2.99 a month. That helps you get in there, and that'll also highlight you as well. But, I think if we could get some more interaction with some of these call-in shows, I could do a lot more of those. So I would love that. Let me know what you guys think about that as well. It's exciting, obviously coming into this season. There's going to be a lot of storylines to talk about. The SEC, I'm excited for that. I'm excited for this July 1 kickoff thing, the SEC kickoff deal. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe we can, since I didn't get to the spring game, I definitely want to be there for that. I'm in the process of trying to get moved out that way anyway, so maybe it'll happen by then. If not, I'll be there anyway. I'm going to make sure I get out there for that one anyways, right? So yeah, we'll get us some kind of call in working on that, and we'll get a day of the week, or maybe we'll do it a couple of days a week. But I enjoy that kind of stuff. I think some of the better shows that I like watching, they either, maybe you can call in and leave a message or something like that. I've seen some of that as well around, but it just kind of helps. And I think you guys have a lot of good topics to talk about a lot too, man. I mean, we come up with topics, and you're constantly looking for things to talk about and things like that. And I mean, obviously right now, lately, I've been stuck on this OU disrespect stuff, which I love, because I think I love all these receipts we're going to have for this next year with for the Mizzou clowns and and then even some of these podcasts out there that are, just underestimating and under appreciating who Brent Venables is and what he's done. I don't care if it was as a coordinator. Somebody said on the comments yesterday, he has to earn it. What do you think he's been doing for 30 years? He's earned it. His respect. I mean, you don't get the Oklahoma job without being that guy, right? So I think it's disrespect, and I'm going to keep talking about it. And I think that he's going to prove it anyway. I do. I don't think that you put this many talented players on your roster in this amount of time and not continue to do that and get even better. And I don't buy that the SEC is too much for Oklahoma. Nobody's too much for Oklahoma. Come on, let's be real. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. So, hey, Kyle Dupuis, man, you are late. But hey, we appreciate you coming in anyway. Another one of our favorite guys. I love it that this community is growing the way it is, guys. I love it that the community is growing the way it is. I appreciate it. And I'm excited, about the season coming up. Thank you guys for everything you do. Make sure that you hit that like button on the way out, and we will see you on the next one.